Hello and welcome to another Tough Talk Tuesday, y'all. Listen, we have not gone live in a long time, and I am excited to be back live on another Tough Talk Tuesday where we support, we love on our men, we encourage them, and I'm excited to be here. I am Rachel Hunter, your licensed clinical social worker and your host. And tonight's segment is supported by RDH Counseling and Consulting, where we help you become your healthiest self. And as y'all can see, I have a guest, a special guest. I got Eddie in the building. So we're going to bring him in. Welcome, Eddie. How are you feeling tonight?
I'm feeling pretty good. Looking forward to this. You never know the flow with live, but I'm excited for it.
Yes. Well, I'm excited to have y'all joining us. And y'all know how we do. When y'all come in, let me know where you are tuning in from. I want to shout y'all out. Share this. Like it. Let me see. My team tells me I'm supposed to say like, share, and subscribe. So listen, y'all subscribe to the YouTube channel. We have got to get that up. I haven't been over there a lot, but we got to get our subscribers up over there. Share this, especially to the men in your life. We're talking about fatherhood. We're talking about father wounds, but we're also talking about how to empower, how to grow in your role as a father and as a man. That has been on my heart. And so tonight we're going to go a little bit deeper into some of the topics that we talk about when it comes to supporting our men, because it is, after all, Tough Talk Tuesday. So when y'all come in, let me know where you are tuning in from. We have Chris in the building. Hello and welcome, Chris. Thank you for joining us. When y'all come in, let us know where you are tuning in from. Share this as well. We are streaming to Facebook. Where are we at, Eddie? We are on Facebook. We are on YouTube. And we're also on LinkedIn. And we just got over there at LinkedIn. So I'm going to have Eddie introduce himself. But before he does that, I want to briefly and quickly tell y'all about something I'm really excited about. So for the last couple of years, I have been given the privilege and the honor really to serve and to support our men. And as a result of doing that, I see what our men are going through, the pressure, the stress, and especially men of color. There's an added level of stressors that come with that. And so it's on my heart, it's on God's heart to support our men. And so we are doing our first annual Let the Kings Arise Men's Wellness Retreat. That is going to be in Sandbridge, Virginia in October. So a 4-day, 4-night retreat. Just come, you get to figuratively let your hair down, but you get a place where you can take your mask off if you have hair. You get to take your mask off and just be you. Like, you don't have to worry about trying to you get to be you, decompress, relax. And we're also going to pour into you. So we got a chef that's going to be out there. Y'all will be able to get some massages, but it's going to be on the beach. So you're going to have an opportunity to enjoy that as well. So we want to support our men. That's going to be October. Register today. We're down. We only have 9 rooms left. And when they're gone, they're gone. We have the early bird special. So register today. All right. When y'all come in, let us know where y'all are tuning in from. Eddie, we got Eddie White with us. And Eddie, take it away. Go ahead and introduce yourself. And then we're going to hop into the content talking about fathers.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. And great to be here. I keep my name on the block there pretty simple, Eddie White, but there is some context. And the first part is I go by Eddie. I used to not highlight this because it just seemed unnecessary, but I have more and more people be surprised who knew me for more than a couple months. My first name is James. So my full name is James Edward White Jr. And this represented in my website. the reason I go by Eddie is that there are
Mhm.
so many Jameses in my family. My dad, I'm a junior, had an uncle, had a cousin, and I'm one of the younger ones in my particular generation. So by the time
Okay.
I got to me, I got Eddie, which is fine. But I clarify it's Eddie because my sister would clown me and call me Edie sometimes. And I was like, look, Edie's with a Y. So my name is James Edward White Jr. I go by Eddie. I was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And like I tell 90% of the people who ask, I'm not a Steelers fan. That's a separate story for a different day. If you come to the retreat, I'll be helping out Rachel. You can ask me that. But I was born in Pittsburgh, grew up outside of a small town called Johnstown, for those who are familiar with the Western Pennsylvania history or geography. But I went to school, University of Georgia. So I tell people I have some Southern in me. I went to University of Georgia in Athens, got my degree in chemistry. And then about 15 years later, so I got my master's degree from Kansas State University. And that's
Mm.
because after I graduated, I went into the Army. So I was commissioned into the United States Army. I did about 28 and a half years in that particular field, which I achieved a level of success, as you would imagine, to be in that long. Because in the Army, if you don't do well, they kick you out. That's kind of the way the Army does it, an up and out model. So I was an officer. I achieved the rank of Colonel, '06 for those who are military.
Thank you for
And
your service.
you're welcome. You're welcome. And when I finished that up, I went into my business full time. And my business, I'll talk about in a moment. But if this is being recorded and watched, I must say I've been married to my beautiful wife for over 30 years now. She's also from Georgia. Yeah, we didn't meet in Georgia. We met in Louisiana because she was in the military as well. But I've been married to my wife, Bambi, for over 30 years. We have two grown daughters and also have a son-in-law and a grandson and another grandson coming here in the next 3 or 4 months. So I definitely am a father. I'm a husband. I have multiple years in that space, decades, if you will. And I'll try to offer that, I think, in our discussion tonight from that perspective. And then I also teach in those areas as well. So my business does leadership development. That includes organizational consultation. I'm an adjunct professor who teaches leadership. Then I do literacy. My literacy is my life alignment program to help really people get oriented in the direction they want to go. And then in practical terms, take action towards that end. And then I do legacy. And legacy is my parenting classes. But it was born from the publication of my book about raising my daughters to be empowered young women back in 2019. I used to do fathers raising daughters classes virtually for a couple years. And now I mostly do in-person parenting classes in the 757, which is the Hampton Roads, Tidewater area for those who are familiar with Virginia. So that's a quick snippet. I think I told Rachel to give me clues when I get too long-winded. So I didn't see any winks or scratching of her head. So that is a quick one over the world about who I am and what I bring to the live session tonight. So back over to you, Rachel.
Excellent. Excellent. So as y'all can see, we have a well-rounded individual, father, husband, and I want to say thank you for being willing to give of your time, but also being willing to be a part of the wellness retreat as well. Because for many of y'all who don't know, some of what Eddie does is he has this phenomenal life alignment. Oh man, and I took it. It's a course that he provides, and that thing is going to get you right, all the way right. And so we're going to be doing a little bit of that during the wellness retreat as well, especially helping men to think strategically and think about where you are, where you're trying to get to. So thank you for being here, Eddie. Thank you for sharing that. Welcome everyone. As you come in, let us know in the comments where you are tuning in from. And I want to give you a shout out. We are going to go ahead and hop in. So we have been on Tuesdays. If you don't know, that means that you may not be subscribed. Go ahead and subscribe. Like the page. Put your notifications on so that you can see when we go live, because this month we're going to be going live on Tuesdays, which is our Tough Talk Tuesday, where we support and encourage our men folk. And listen, let me tell you how powerful this conversation is that we're going to have tonight. So a part of what we did was we advertised for it. And when I say the devil was busy, The devil was busy. There was a lot of support, but then there was some ugly in there talking about my men, talking about my men of color. There was some, I thought, oh, this is exactly what we need to be talking about. So tonight we're talking about mending our men, and we're talking specifically about fatherhood, father wounds. And so Eddie and I are going to go back and forth and kind of just break some stuff down. So I want to start by talking about fatherhood and talking about father wounds. And so when we're thinking about this whole idea of father wounds, and as y'all know, and if you don't know, I am a therapist in the daytime sometimes. So for the last couple of years, I have been working with men, primarily with men. And one of the things that comes up is that we see that there is a thing called father wound. And hey, Edwina. And so, Edwina, where are you joining us from? And so when we're talking about father wounds, we're talking about, and I want y'all to think of it like this. Anytime you are not fathered properly, right? So maybe your father wasn't in your life growing up, or maybe your biological father was there, but he wasn't present, right? Because sometimes we have fathers who don't know how to father. They didn't have a role model. And so whenever we're not fathered properly, there can be a wound, there can be trauma that takes place, and it impacts how you see yourself, how you see men as a whole, and then it also is going to impact how you father, right? Because whenever we get traumatized, we tend to go to extremes. I ain't gonna never, or you end up doing what you said you was never gonna do. So that's a little bit about father wounds. And so our first question, Eddie, that I kind of want us to talk about is, what does being, I want to start with you, right? Like, so when you think about being a father, what does that mean to you? And is your father in your life? And if so, how has having your dad in your life, how has that influenced your perspective about what it means to be a father?
I would start with two words, and the two words have subcontext, but the two words that always resonated with me when I talk and I think fatherhood is provide and protect. But I don't think it's singular. Provide, I think you're doing a couple things as far as providing. You're providing leadership. You're providing a safe and secure environment in your home. You're providing provisions. Obviously, you're expected to, a lot of men, there's a thing, and sometimes get sensitive about, making the money or supporting the household income. That's a separate conversation about couples dynamic. But you're also providing a reference. You kind of mentioned about being present. You talked about leading and the absence of that and how that resonates with children as they become adults. So I believe as you provide those things. So provide is the first P. The second P is protect. And protect is not just the physical protection, which a lot of people think, the father, the man has to be there. I think protection is both mentally and physically and emotionally. And if you think about it financially, there's a lot of discussion about wealth and legacy from a financial perspective. Yeah. And whether or not you are the provider and you make the money, you manage the money, you also have a responsibility about partnering with or enabling financial to be something that is not an impediment. It's not something that precludes the things that you're supposed to provide. But I also think it's important that we as men understand that protection is not just physical. There's absolutely a mental and emotional component to it. Now, I've been blessed. My father has been in my life my entire life. My mother actually remarried my dad before I was born, and they have been married over 50 years. I'm not telling my age, but I'm a little bit like that age. And we actually talk every week. And I think one of the things that I've been blessed with is maybe about 7 or 8 years ago, I went to my dad and said, hey, I'd like to have a deeper relationship. For my dad, he's about 6'1". I'm average height, 5'8", 5'9", but my dad has a gravitas where I was scared of my dad until I was 16. I mean, he just wasn't one to be played with. And we've had a good relationship, not a great relationship, up until maybe about a decade ago where we elevated. So I've been blessed to be poured into from generational mentorship. He was just here this past weekend. And that's where the part about reference comes in, because when I look at what I did as a father and how I led my household, even my relationship with my wife, it is tied into the reference, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, of my dad. And I believe that that is something that we provide, as well as the protection piece.
I want to pause right there because this is some good stuff that you were saying. I want to kind of unpack it a little bit. And first, it started with the idea of fathers providing, and not only providing protection, right? Like the physical protection and the finances, but also really the psychological safety. And that's a thing that I think sometimes men don't even recognize that that is a thing that they are capable and have the capacity to do. And I was talking to a couple of gentlemen some time ago, and I was telling them, I said, sometimes y'all don't even recognize like how you shape the environment just by being there. Like, okay, prime example. There have been times when, as a female, I have had to handle situations, and I'm like, man, if a dude was here, it would have been a whole lot different. And so things like taking our cars in, right, to the mechanic shop, it's a whole different, like, you just knowing, like, okay, I'm not gonna have to worry about this. He's gonna take this in. It's the environment shifts, but the psychological safety, the emotional and mental safety that women and females and children feel because the father is there, sometimes I think is an overlooked or not understood component. So I'm glad that you brought that up. And I want to kind of touch bases with the audience. So Eddie, you shared that your father, actually your stepfather, right?
No, he's my biological father.
Okay.
My brothers and sisters arguably is their stepfather, because I think he adopted them, because we've all been
Gotcha.
around under him for 50 years. I'm the youngest of the four.
Okay, gotcha. So this is your biological father that you have been able to have the privilege of having, really blessed to have a father figure in your life. And I heard what you said, which is like, you were intentional about saying, hey, growing up, now that I'm old, I would like to make sure that we have, a relationship that's even deeper. Audience, I want to hear from y'all. How would you describe the relationship that you have with your father? Is your father in your life, biological or otherwise? Because I think that's important to bring out too, that even if you don't have your biological father in your life, you still can have an individual that steps into that role and provides that safety, the protection. The other piece that I want to bring out is that men and fathers also provide identity. And so a part of that identity is connected to people recognizing that you are good, like you have value, you are. And so for the daughters, and I have my book coming out, Tears of a Daughter, where we talk about the impact that fathers have, the identity that they give their daughters. You are enough. You are beautiful. And I've talked to a lot of women where they never even heard, the first time they heard a man call them beautiful was a man on the street, someone trying to talk to them. And so that identity is something else that fathers provide. So thank you for bringing that up. Y'all put that in the chat. How do you describe the relationship that you have with your father? Do you have a father or a father figure? And is there a difference for you in what you've recognized growing up? So y'all put that in the chat. Eddie, let's go to the second question, where do you think the absence or presence of a strong father figure affects a man's emotional well-being and that sense of identity? I want us to kind of go into there.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's no doubt that it does. And the contrast of presence or absence is black and white, but I think there's another, which is a little bit gray, which is what presence means. And one of the things that I talk when I do fatherhood class particularly is being all in. And being all in means that you are present physically, you're present mentally, you're present emotionally. And I think you differentiate that. Absent could be means you're physically not there. Maybe you're coming in as a part-time father. You have intermediate contact with your child, or you're a deadbeat and you're just not there. And then the child is dealing with that. And then you have fully present, which is I call all in, or you have this present either partially, in some instances, negatively. So there's a lot of nuances to presence or absence, obviously. But if you have what I consider an all-in father, one who, as you recall, because one of the things about as you progress from childhood to adulthood to parenthood is whatever happened, you're going to interpret that. So as a father, we do certain things to impress upon our children. As a child and a future adult, you're going to receive those and interpret those in different ways. And when you go into how does that calibrate your emotional well-being, it is in part how you interpret the presence, absence, and a positive or a negative or a partial perspective of your father.
Yeah.
And to me, that then, in many respects, it establishes your foundation. I mean, if you go through the dynamic of going from a baby boy from a baby to a boy to a young man, that progression is very much informed by whoever the modeled man that you view, or however it is explained to you what a man should be. And that interpretation and internalization then drives, okay, I can't cry. Or it drives that it's all about how much money I make. Or it drives about, it could be your faith, it could be your ethnicity, it could, whatever it is, that model is going to really inform you. And one of the things I tell people, I had this conversation with a young kid, a couple of weeks ago, and I was down in Alabama. I was asking what his favorite sports team was. And he said it was the Atlanta Braves. We're in Huntsville. Okay. But I told him, I said, understand something. I just said this to a couple other friends as well a little bit later. I said, there's only a few things in life that you make a decision at 9, 10, 11 years old that you're expected to be beholden to it for the rest of your life. And one of those is your sports team. But you can trace that to your identity as a man. When you're that age, the impression that your father has on you subconsciously that will eventually manifest consciously will determine whether you are looking for your identity or you're looking for somebody else to determine your identity, or you're walking in a space that says, I know who I am. And I know who my lineage is. And I know what pride I have with that. And then that sort of creates your emotional, because then are you going to get upset when people talk about what you didn't have or what they have that you get upset about? And so I absolutely believe it does. But I think we have to be clear about defining the nuance of presence or absence as well.
Yeah. And that's, oh man, that is so key. And you're hitting on some really important points. One, that a parent, a father, can be present in the house and yet not be present and not be able to pour into their children. And specifically when we're talking about identity and teaching about lineage and teaching about legacy and your heritage, like, who are you? Like, yeah, you my son, you're my daughter, and this is what this means. And so one of the things that is I get excited about is working with men and getting them to a place where they recognize their identity 2 feet down, and they get to a place where they recognize, like, I'm a king. I know who I am. And it shifts how they show up, because when you know who you are, honey, you move different. You move different. And I remember years ago having a conversation where an individual was used to kind of, posturing, being aggressive on the outside. And as that person began to heal, to grow, to develop, and get secure in their identity, all that shifted. Because when you know who you are, you don't have to, that posturing really is an insecurity. I am afraid. And because I'm afraid, I want to keep you from coming near me. And so that posturing is there. But when our kings begin to really realize who they are, you move different. You move a lot different when you're securing your identity. So I'm so glad you brought that up. Um, Thank y'all for joining. As you come in, share, like, tell us where you are tuning in from. We are talking about men. We're supporting our men. Today is Tough Talk Tuesday, where we love on our men, but we also talk about the reality that men, the things that men go through. And today we're talking about fatherhood. As y'all can tell, I'm getting excited because I love talking about the men and supporting them. And we're talking about fatherhood. We're also talking about the impact that having a father has on the children. There's also an impact if there hasn't been a father. And that's the reality. And a lot of us have not had either fathers that were present physically, or if they were present physically, they were not present emotionally, mentally, and maybe lacked some of the capacity. And then we have some men, and Eddie was sharing with us the relationship that he has with his father. And so we want to kind of talk about that. Hey, stop waiting to live. Good evening. Thank you for joining us from Chesapeake. We're talking about fatherhood. Y'all go ahead and share this. How would y'all describe the relationship that you have with your father? And did you experience some of what Eddie has been sharing, where the identity piece, right? Like, did you feel that your father was present and was able to help provide that sense of identity, the identity in the space of this is who you are, this is how men do, and then for the ladies, what was that like for you to have a father to give you identity? Did you ever have a place where you felt that psychological safety, where I can go and talk to my dad about anything? I know he's going to cover me. I know he's going to protect me. Or did you not? Is that an area that you wish that you had? And what was that like for you? So we'll talk more about that, but y'all put that in the comment. Eddie, I want us to go to the next question. When we talk about that father wound, right? And especially because society lies to our men and says, that whole be strong, don't talk about it, man up. But father wounds hurt. They are wounds. And I teach, and Eddie, you've heard me teach before, when I talk about wounds and I talk about trauma, it is as if you have no shoes on, no socks on, and there are large pieces of glass. And so for the individuals where if you haven't had your father in your life consistently, those are pieces of glass that you've stepped on. It may have had for some, a very painful impact. For some, it's a little bit less deeper, but there are wounds there, and it impacts how you see yourself. And so the expectation that men have about be strong, don't talk about the pain of not having a father or what that was like. How does that, what society says, how do you feel that impacts a man's ability to even talk about a father wound and being affected by it? But how do you think that shows up? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, that is for a lot of men, that's sensitive, and it really gets into trust issues. It gets into potentially acting out. It gets into the immaturity of being in relationships that I think a lot of women would profess to. It affects growth in how you develop in any area, whether spiritual or sometimes professional, personal. It affects, I think, your discipline. It affects your commitment. So there are a lot of secondary effects because in many regards, the father is the standard bearer for you. So I mentioned being a reference, but another term is the standard. And that standard translates in what you accept, what you allow. And
Yeah.
a lot of times when people look at others that are doing things that are odd and weird or even destructive, you're like, well, how do
Yeah.
you even get to that place?
Yeah.
Because the standard that was created when they were young, it manifests when you're older. And one of the things I'll share this, I was when I was in Alabama once again, we're at a friend of ours' surprise birthday party, 60th. And they have 3 daughters. All of them are beautiful. Some are a little bit older than my daughter. A couple are in between or a little bit younger. And they all brought their boyfriends. And all the boyfriends sat at the table. I called it the boyfriend table. It was kind of cute. But I mentioned to the boys, to the young men, because I mean they range from 32 to about 25, I think. And I told the men, I said, understand something. The fact that you're here means something because their last name are the Harmons. I said, because the Harmon girls are similar to my girls. They don't just bring anybody into the family space or into the house because there's a standard by which if you're not at the standard, they ain't even going to think about bringing you into that personal space.
Yeah.
But that standard is not only in relationships, it's with everything. It is with your work ethic. It's with how you respond and interact with people. It's with how you regulate your emotions. It's with how you tolerate or don't tolerate people around you. Well, if you remove that standard or the standard is morphed, then what happens is you show up and what you believe is just, doesn't everybody show up that way?
Yeah.
People are like, nah, bro. I mean, there was a commercial real quick. There was a commercial that I saw decades ago. And those who may be older remember the store called Kinko's. I'm not sure they're still in business.
Yes.
And they had a commercial. And the guy walks up to the counter and says, hey, I'd like to get 25 color copies of this. And the person goes, sir, this is a black and white copy. Yeah. But I want 25 color copies. She looked and he was like, what? I want 20. Is it me? What? Looking around. They're like, yeah, it's you. Your standards and your understanding are warped and everybody else sees it.
Yeah.
Except you. And now you got to flip that. So that's sort of I think one of the challenges you have, and it manifests in places that are so impactful to other people, your children, your spouse, in your family, relationships. So yeah, I think it absolutely is a challenge that has to be addressed.
Yeah. And those are things that I think sometimes people don't think about that. And this is what, as a therapist, we help people to understand why you're showing up the way you are showing up. And I've worked with a lot of individuals over the years where they are, in the family, sometimes they're not feeling comfortable or even confident to show up the way they'd like to. And so it's when they begin to do that work and begin to heal that they can show up that way. I do work in the jails, and you know this, Eddie, but so as I'm working with those men in there, what you see is exactly what you just described, where there's a lack of discipline, because when you don't have a father, that is one of the things. This is why, man, shout out to the fathers, because sometimes y'all don't realize the impact that you're having. But even a father, a healthy father that knows how to set boundaries, you are teaching your children first and foremost how to honor and how to respect authority. If you don't have that that's basic foundational principle. If you don't know how to handle, maneuver, and manage with authority, man, you're going to have problems your whole life. And from there, that lends to the whole discipline, being disciplined. And as you said, being able to regulate your emotions. And so individuals that struggle in those areas oftentimes have father wounds, have not been fathered properly, or, are struggling in that area. So I'm glad you brought that out. Anything that you want to say about that before we go to the next question?
One thing I just want to, and this is something I'm on other, obviously, platforms, but I think that I don't want to take away, and I believe in your heart and everybody who receives you understands that we are not at all taking away from the power and impact and importance of mothers.
Yes.
But the reality is, I believe it takes 2 to effectively raise a child without really being overwhelmed and compromising. But also statistically, there's statistics that talk about the presence or absence of fathers, and there's a natural, I'm a fan of the apostolic order, right? There's a natural order of things, and in that natural order of things, there's certain roles and responsibilities that fall upon certain people at certain times. And I believe that's really what we're talking. We talk about fatherhood and the impact. So I just want to make sure that doesn't come across like, hey, without a father, nothing can happen. There are a lot of successful people. I know people personally who have overcome a lot of things as a single mother and raised their children, whether it's boys or girls. But I believe it is noteworthy. And it is important, particularly as we're focusing on men tonight, Rachel, is that we recognize the impact, both potentially positive or potentially negative, of the absence or the fully present father.
Yeah. Listen, today is Tough Talk Tuesday, ladies. We're going to come back on a later day. Okay. So queens, y'all already know we be holding it down, and all that goes without saying. Today is Tough Talk Tuesday. Can the men get a chance? But yes, queens, y'all know we do what we do. And Lord knows it is a lot easier when you have a united front, when you have a mother and a father. And if you're able to do that, just like, you were talking about statistics, when you think about income, when you think about educational attainment, and when you think about where your children can go, the trajectory for your children when they have a healthy two-parent household, man, it's delicious. And especially in the Black community. And this is one of the things that, Eddie, I know your heart, and I preach as well, is if we can build a strong family, from there you go and you have a strong community. And from there, you got a strong community, we hitting the nation, right? And so people ask me, how was your day today? I said, man, my day was great. I'm saving the world one person at a time. And so we're looking at fathers today. You know what I mean? Edwina, can the men folk look, we give them about 4 or 5 minutes. It's the times we don't give them enough support and enough love. And so y'all know where I'm at with it. So excellent. Any questions from the audience, or even thoughts that come up for you when you think about the men in your lives, whether it's your partner, whether it's your father figure? What has the impact been for you having a man in your life, or the other side of it, not having that man in your life, and or having a healthy man in your life, because there are impacts one way or the other. So from the audience, y'all go ahead and put that in the chat, and then we'll talk about that. Any questions that y'all have about anything that Eddie and I have spoken about? And I want to talk specifically for the women, the impact of a father figure in a girl's life. And Eddie, you have daughters, so you already know. But as an adult who had father wounds, it is a thing. It is a whole thing. And so as women, because the identity piece is there and that psychological safety, if you don't have a healthy father, or if you don't have a father that creates that sense of covering and protection for you, man, you grow up. Look, so we talk about harmful core beliefs, right? That's the lenses that we look at life through. And Eddie, all my life I had to fight. Right? Because as a female, if you have not been properly covered by a father, then you don't come out feeling safe. And so a lot of energy is invested in staying safe, keeping yourself safe. And when you think about that really puts you in a deficit, because the energy that you're expending to stay safe, keep your head on a swivel, is stopping you from moving ahead. And so this is why it's so important for fathers to step up. And if you're not healthy, to get healthy so that you can show up for your children the way they need you to. Eddie, I'm going to bring some of these questions in from the audience. Thank y'all, audience. All right, I'm going to start with the first question for Eddie. How do you, oh, wait a minute, let me bring that one. Okay, Eddie, how do you feel your approach to fatherhood changed and or evolved over time? Excellent question.
Yeah, that is a really good one. I had a couple crucible moments in my fatherhood time, and the biggest one was probably when I was riding on a business trip with a coworker. I was obviously in the military. He was a senior officer, but he had teenage girls at the time. And my girls were 1 or 2. And as you know, when the kids are that young, just like my grandson is now, you're just trying to keep them alive. You playing with them, talking to them, trying to count to them. Nothing really, over the top. And we were on this ride, and he just kept complaining about how kids weren't listening, feel like he's missed them. They've already grown up, and they're maybe 14, 15 years old, somewhere around there. And I was looking at them like, I don't understand. I mean, they're still in the house. You're raising them. I don't get it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until after that I went back home and I started thinking about where that came from. And it hit me. He waited too long. He tried to pour into his daughters when they were teenagers. And we all know, because we were teenagers, you ain't trying to listen to your parents. If you already listen to them, I always say about half the time, you may understand all of it, but you're not going to be listening to it all the time.
Yeah.
And when that happened, it took me to a different place. It took me to one where I was not going to wait long, that I was not going to try to catch up. And that's when I created my philosophy. And I've shared this with you, I think, before, Rachel. I had 3 philosophies by the time my kids turned about 4 or 5. And I also told my kids, I told my nephews and my nieces who have 1 or 2 year old kids now as well. I said, by the time they turn 5 years old, I recommend that you 2 communicate if you're in part covenant, or you identify what your top 3 are. And those top 3 dictate how you prioritize and navigate the next 15 years of raising them. For me, one of mine was raising my girls to have high self-esteem. That's what attracted me to my wife. Number 2 was raising to be independent adults, functional independent adults, really. And number 3 was nothing catastrophic before they graduated high school, at least. And catastrophic was sex, particularly pregnancy, alcohol, abuse, any abuse, physical, sexual, and drugs. Those 3, and my wife also agreed to it, that is really was derived from me listening to this parent complain about missing his kids growing up. And then from there, I just adjusted from phase to phase, tied to that based off the parenting dynamic that changes when your kids go from single digits to double digits to about to leave the house.
That was an excellent question. And you're bringing out things that sometimes we as parents don't think about, which is how do we want our children to be when they grow up, and what do we start doing now? And even when you're thinking about, fathers and fatherhood and what that looks like, that is so important. And ladies, if your partners, your baby daddies or your husband need to kind of have this kind of mindset, send them, tell them about the men's wellness retreat. Eddie is going to be there. And these are some of the topics that we're going to kind of start helping support our men with. Edwina said, I personally have experienced both sides. And as an adult, I am learning how to heal from it. Listen, when we're talking about the role of men and fathers, it's a thing. It is really a thing. And so this is why it's so important for our men to heal and be healthy and whole. You start where you are, right? You can't go back and change what you may have done, because even some of the fathers, not only did you have a father wound, but you created a father wound because you didn't know how to do. And so maybe you didn't have role models and things of that nature. So it is important for you to grow, to heal, and to look for ways to develop. Chris said, one thing that I can say for someone who hasn't had a father figure that you have helped me learn how to be the man and how I want to father in the future. So, listen, and that's what it's about, right? We grow, we develop, and you learn. You may not have had that father figure, but what you gonna do? You gonna stay there, or you get to make a choice. So excellent, excellent, Eddie. Let's ready for the next question. All right. And y'all share this because I know y'all, as we're talking, this is conversation that you know some fellas need to hear. Some of your brothers, your husbands, your partners, your uncles need to hear. Eddie, how can men support each other, right? Especially if as a man you see your brother is struggling and you see he's dealing with some identity issues, or just it's dealing with the father wound, and maybe has children and is struggling when it comes to providing that support or even giving them wisdom and things like that. How can they support each other?
I think it starts with two things that are not naturally in the men's lexicon, and that is trust and vulnerability.
Yeah.
And those are high bars, particularly when you talk about depth. I'll trust you, like I always say, I'm from Pittsburgh. People are like, hey, you're a Steelers fan. We get into that conversation. We can roll for a half an hour to 45 minutes talking about sports. Saw something on a game on the weekend. We can roll for an hour talking about that. But when I talk trust and vulnerability, the first step is trusting someone. A lot of times, who do we trust? Whether it's someone like you, Rachel, a therapist, whether it's another friend. But once you get to the point of trusting them, are you willing to share something that you are guarded about? Now, a lot of times it takes one or the other. If you have 2 men in a room or 3 men in a room, one of them has to share something that is vulnerable, that opens up something for another one to me to respond. Because, hey, it's almost like the old adage, you don't say you love somebody until they say they love you, right? Did they say you love you? Did you say it first? You're showing yourself. You can't. So for men, a lot of times it's a vulnerability state, because now it's like, hey, what's going to happen? So for men, I think to really grow and to support each other, this goes into, and we've talked about this, a mentorship thing. And regardless of your age, you have got to decide who do you trust, who you're going to be vulnerable to. And I think I told you about this, Rachel. I've had a young man who is in his 20s, and I'm mentoring him now. And it was funny. I went out with him about 3 or 4 weeks ago. We had breakfast together, or brunch. And I asked him about if he had a father figure. And he said no. He said his dad wasn't absent. And I said, what are you, 23? He said, more than my dad knows about me. And just that simple exchange. But he was one who trusted and made himself vulnerable to me as a mentor, and it potentially changed his life. And there are a lot of men out there who, if they were to show their vulnerability, opens up the door for other men to share their experience, to partner to get them to navigate through a space, to pour into them with insights and perspectives that they can alter to effectively navigate through, heal from, to your point, fatherhood wounds, heal from the thing, reconcile whatever it is, change their mindset, and then set themselves on a different trajectory. So trust and vulnerability is first and foremost before you can actually get to the support and building of or resolving wounds.
That is, oh my goodness, especially that trust piece, right? Because when people have been wounded and have grown up, if they have been hurt, if situations have come up to where they opened up or they trusted someone and there was a negative consequence to it, they then begin to learn that it's not safe to trust. And people make inner vows. They say, I ain't gonna never let myself get hurt again, right? And so that wall comes up. But in order to get to a place where you are able to be healed and healthy and whole, you do have to get in a community, but you do have to get into a place where you get comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? In order to be able to heal. And that vulnerability comes in there. And that's one of the things that I've been so honored to have safe spaces for men to where they trust me enough to be vulnerable and to open up. And then that's when healing is able to take place. So that is so key. It's so important. But bravery and being and being courageous is where vulnerability and trust comes in. I want to bring the comment in from the audience for those, and it sounds like you kind of hit on this, for those men that don't have father figures in the household now or didn't have it growing up. How could they build community and grow and learn now that they're trying to lead? And I think you kind of hit on that. Anything you want to add to that?
No, I think the part there about how can they have to put themselves in a position to. One of the things I talk about, and I talk about this in some of my classes, is someone typically has to initiate a given step. If you have a bad relationship and you want to reconcile that, someone has to initiate. Then the other person has to respond. So if you're lacking something, you have to figure out, where do I go in order to fill that lack? What steps do I take to fill where the opportunities exist? And then you got to be bold enough to take that step. So I think that's one of the things that trust and vulnerability is sort of goes with, from a little bit more of an abstract, but from very practical perspective. You got to either make the call, make the email, drive, walk to the place to create the opportunity.
Yeah. One of the other things too is when, you're talking about community, shameless plug, it is about, especially for men who are wanting to learn how to overcome some of the father wounds and really how to get into this place where they are able to be the leaders that they're desiring, whether it's personally leading yourself first, and then being able to lead a family, and then even in the workspace, leading a business or leading those that you are called to serve. All of that is important, and it does start with individuals healing first and then connecting with that community. And that's one of the benefits of the men's group that I do, is having that community of like-minded individuals who also recognize the importance of healing and becoming the best versions of themselves. And so, but you have to heal first before you can lead, because if not, you're bleeding all over. You're taking you everywhere you go. And so if you have not healed, you're bleeding even in your position of leadership. And that's one of the retreats that Eddie and I are going to be doing in November for pastors. Those that are in positions of leadership, you have the responsibility to make sure that you are healed and healthy, because if not, honey, you is bleeding. The other question that they had, and before we get to our last question, we didn't get a chance to go through all of the questions, but I want to, and then if y'all have other questions in the comment section, go ahead and put them in there now. We normally go for about an hour, so we're getting to the hour, but if y'all have a few more questions, I'll try to ask Eddie to stay with us just a little bit longer. What's one lesson you learned in fatherhood you wish you had learned sooner? And is there an area of fatherhood you are continuing to work on now? Such a great question.
I'm not sure about sooner. I'll give an answer that is kind of too late.
Okay.
But this is something that I did when I was doing my Fathers Raising Daughters class. And what I would do is, at the end of the class, it's about a 9-week class, I would bring my wife and my daughters in to share with the fathers their perspective of what I taught. And one of the things my oldest daughter said, which struck me, and there's, one thing that I teach you can't raise your kid to do everything. You really focus and prioritize. But she said I didn't do particularly well in the relationship space. And she said she had a misperception that you marry your, the fathers, sons marry their moms, daughters marry their sons. That's the saying out there.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm.
And she goes, that wasn't true. She goes, actually, you marry your complement. And the compliment to my daughter was my wife's personality, because she was
Gotcha.
60 or 70%. We give a generic percentage of me. Now, she happened to meet her husband when she was in middle school, and they knew each other and they interacted and were friends and dated over, the next 10 years or so before they got married. But she said, I didn't necessarily teach relationships as well as she felt I could have. So if there's something, I can't change that now, but if there's something I would have done better potentially. Now, mind you, my perspective was to really get them to be, to your point, Rachel, I wanted them to be very grounded in who they are, self-identity, self-worth, self-value. And then what I believe, either, in the back of my mind or in front of my mind, I can't remember at this point, that if they know who they are and they're strong, then they'll know what they want and want to accept in a relationship. But I didn't get a lot into the relationship piece that she believed I could have. And where I've evolved really as a grandparent, one of the things that emerged to me, and I'm not sure how many grandparents are out there, but one thing that I learned as a young grandparent is my first charge is not to my grandkid. My first charge is to my kid and their spouse in being parents. So a lot of times grandparents jump to I'm raising my grandkid. What I found in listening to them and conversations and what they struggle with as a young new couple with a kid is that I need to make sure they understand what does it mean to be in a healthy relationship, a functional family from the 30 years that I have. And then when my grandson turns 4, 5, 6, I get into that particular space. So that's something that I'm evolving in as a grandparent, as opposed to what I can evolve in as a parent since my kids are grown.
That was really good question. When we are talking about men stepping into the role of leaders, and this isn't necessarily one of the questions, but it kind of ties into the conversation that we've been having. How can men get more confident, feel more comfortable with leading, not only themselves, but also others? Like, okay, I got a baby now. I got a family now. I got married. Nobody ever sat down and taught me or talked to me about leading a family. Shoot, I don't know. What advice, what words, what would you say to those men?
Yeah, I think there's two angles you can look at that, Rachel. One, if you're a young father looking forward, then you want to find a mentor. And that goes into what we talked about previously. You want to get into spaces where men are, where in, high character men, spiritually grounded men, and, wherever those are, community groups, church groups, wherever those forums are, you want to get to a place where you find what I call generational mentors in that regard, where they're older, they traveled, me, I try to get mentors who are 20, plus years older, because they traveled, decades in front, maybe another one who's 15 or so. So if you're young and you're looking for that, you need to find spaces and places where men are. Shameless plug, you can contact Rachel Hunter because she knows a handful herself that she can probably lead you into. Now, if you are a man who is leading a multi-generational household, I would encourage you to overtly introduce leadership and head of household to your son, your future son. One thing about having daughters, and I know friends of mine who really have gravitated towards this, is I had a conversation with my future son-in-law 12 months before he married my daughter, and we created a relationship dynamic. And I explained to him about, from my perspective, what does it mean to lead a household? What does it mean to be a man? I didn't know what his introduction was into that as he was a boy and a young adult, but I knew he was coming into my family, and I intend for my daughter to be married for her entire life with a man of integrity. So therefore, I felt compelled that I had a responsibility to do that. And I never had it done before. And I don't know of any man who had it done with them or for them. But I encourage all the men that I know that if you have a household and you're bringing someone into your home, into your house, into your lineage, into your legacy, and you don't spend any time pouring into them from your perspective beforehand, then I think you're doing a disservice to your family.
That is so key. And sometimes if we have not been fathered by a healthy father who has a certain perspective and mindset, that isn't even something that's thought of. And so this is why it's so important to get around people who have healthy mindsets, to get around men, and have, whether it's through a community, whether it's through the generational mentoring, but recognizing that there's more and that you can do to grow, because you can't, like we said, and I tell my clients all the time, the only reason we go to the past, that we looking in the rear view mirror, is to learn the lesson and to apply the lesson moving forward. So we're not beating ourselves up for what we don't know, didn't have, weren't taught, but we ain't fitting to stay there. No, what do I need to do to move forward? And I love, Eddie, what it is that you shared, which is look for the mentors. Like, make a decision in your mind that as today, me and my house, we are going to do different. What I don't know, I'm not going to allow that to stop me. I'm going to look for ways to get that information, but also be okay with being stretched. Get to that place where you're ready to be stretched, to be, scripture talks about iron sharpening iron. And what we're really talking about is having individuals that are going to challenge you to grow past where you currently are. And as we are talking about developing our men and supporting our men, you all have the ownness. And I'm going to say it just like that. You all are kings. You are the head. You are leaders. But you have to first learn how to lead you. And leading you, and I talk about self-care, is recognizing, one, that you're in a relationship with you. And so how are you treating you? Are you looking at all of the parts of you to make a determination of where you are and how you are? So emotionally and mentally, what's that tank look like? Is it you only got a little bit in there? Spiritually, where you at? Physically, financial, all of those things. And so being able to recognize the relationship you have with you, take care of you, and do what's necessary to help you get to the next level. Because then now when you're talking about connecting with someone else, yeah, they need you to be in a good space so that you can lead. And so that's going to be important. So let me see, I want to pull in these last couple of comments. Any questions, comments all right. I love that you said pour into him as your future son-in-law, not scare him or intimidate him. Lead with love and clear standards. And then Edwina says, as a man and the leader of your household, how do you create an emotional safe space that allows you to feel secure enough to be vulnerable with your spouse or partner? Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, that's some layers. You might have to leave that one up. So the first one, how to create an emotional safe space. I think it starts with being confident in who I am. I mean, one of the things that in being emotionally mature, and I'll tell you, my wife and I both are in a place where we were very confident in who we were. When I came into the relationship, I was confident in my determining that I wanted to marry my wife. And I'll tell you, before we got married, there was a lot of people telling me I shouldn't marry my wife. I can tell you all a story. I don't know if we got time about my wife. I won't do that unless Rachel wants to give me an extra couple of minutes. But my wife and I were very much confident in who we were. And therefore, when I went into our relationship, my emotional stability, grounded from how I was raised, from my parents. I didn't have any scars. I had some stuff that was, like most of us, was close to putting me going left instead of going right. But I was always an emotionally secure person. And so when we talk about that presence we talked about before, the positive and the negative, if you're emotionally unstable and you're volatile, then particularly if both of you are, then things get out of hand quickly. If the one respects the other, then the one who is more emotionally stable and mature will regulate the other one, which I found. So creating that emotional safe space was, first of all, the family recognized that I was the head of household. I believe in apostolic husband, wife, God, Christ, husband, wife. But that also meant that I needed to submit to my father, my savior, and bring that energy, which is one of family. One of all of us are working together for the benefit of all of us. It's not a competition. I ain't trying to outdo my wife. My wife ain't trying to outdo me. We are actually teammates, and the family is all being elevated. So we called ourselves the White House. And whenever my children heard the term White House, because that's my last name, y'all, not political, it was because it carried weight. The fact that we said why is because that was embedded. So that emotional safe space is predicated off me walking in with a level of emotional maturity and with a mindset that we're committed. We're not going to get divorced. So everything we're having in conversations is to get us to a better place. Now that allows you to feel secure enough to be vulnerable with your spouse. The vulnerability piece, I think, is one that is born from the trust and that it's not thrown back at you. I tell couples all the time, the truth is only known and truly known by the couple behind the bedroom door. You can create a facade to your kids, to your friends, to your parents, to everybody. But when you close that bedroom door and ain't nothing but you two in the room, if it's jacked up, it's going to come out. And so you have to recognize that you two are the couple that is the first team of your family. And when you can get to that place, then you become comfortable being vulnerable. And the important part for the person who's receiving the vulnerability is to recognize it, respect it, and don't jack it up. Don't throw it back in the face. Don't make it as something you want, because you're a team. And that, if you don't do that both ways, then you compromise the emotional space potentially, and you also seal up the vulnerability that enables you to grow in that emotional way as well.
That is key, because, and that's one of the things. So I have a coaching group that I do, and it's called Love Like You've Never Been Hurt Before. And in that, specifically, ladies, I talk to us about how to be the rib and the safe space for our partners. And a part of that is like what you just said, Eddie, which is us protecting his heart and not throwing things back up into their face when they do open up. I've worked with countless couples. And one of the biggest things that, a lot of times the ladies are saying to me, how come my husband, he ain't opening up? Or why my man, he doesn't, he's not opening up. He's not talking. I know he feels some kind of way, but he ain't tell. And a lot of times it's because they did open up. They tried it and that's all it takes is one time. Oh, say less. I see you're not a safe space. And so ladies, queens, and I love, Edwina, what you were saying. It's like, hey, you're in here learning. You're asking questions. Nobody's perfect, right? And so the questions that everybody has asked in the comments is so important as you're on this journey to grow, to heal, to develop. And so for men, Eddie, you have brought out some really important points when it comes to men, which is one, as men, if you have a father that has been able to provide, and that fathers play pivotal roles, they provide. And not only do they provide financially and physically, but also they provide a psychologically sound and safe space for their children. And having a father really does play a big role in teaching the child legacy and identity, because that child is going to grow up. And when they grow up, they're going to show up how they have been trained to show up, whether it's healthy or not. And so these are really important parts that you brought out today. And I want to say thank you for taking time to share your wisdom, but also to share your experience as a man. And we definitely want to celebrate that. Any last words or any last thing that you feel like the men specifically need to hear, especially those that maybe didn't have a father, or are coming from a place where they lack discipline or structure, or are just struggling when it comes to fathering and being a father? Any words of encouragement, wisdom, insight?
Yeah, I'd like to two things real quick. And one kind of goes to the title of my book. So the title of my book is Start Point, and then Parenting in the White House. And the subset is Empowering Young Women. But I want to focus on the term start point. And I share that because start point has dual meaning when I chose that as a title. Start point is, what is your start point? My father wrote the foreword to my book. And so he shared from 1945, not knowing his father, his mother leaving him when he was a teenager, his grandparents passing and going to foster care, and everything that he experienced. And that is my start point. He set the conditions for the house I was in. His upbringing created his adulthood, his perception of parenthood. So that was my start point. We all have that start point that precedes us.
Yeah.
But the duality of it is, I then established the start point for my legacy. The legacy doesn't end with me. The legacy for me begins with me, with my children and my grandchildren. So we should all feel empowered that if you are breathing today and you walk the steps tomorrow, you can create the start point for all that will follow you, your children, your grandchildren, your relationship with your spouse, whoever it is. You create the start point for you. I think that's important, because sometimes you feel disempowered. You feel like you can't do anything because of fill in the blank. No. You have a start point and you create the start point. The second thing I want to bring up is a principle that you've heard me talk about, Rachel, and that is going where your eyes take you.
Yes.
I had a young man come to me years ago when I was in church, and he was talking to me. He had moved. His mother stayed here in Virginia Beach, and he went to Pennsylvania with his father. And I said, "Hey, how you doing? How's it going up there?" Because I used to teach him in the youth ministry. And he said, "Well, I'm learning a lot of things I don't want to do and seeing what my dad is doing." And I said, "Yeah, wow, that's a powerful point." But I said, "Be careful now, because sometimes people see what they don't want to do, but they do it anyway." And I said, "You need to orient to where you want to go. You need to look at what you want to achieve, and then you go that way. And by doing that, you will avoid what you don't want to repeat." And so for those who may not have a clear reference, like I mentioned, you need to find a space so you can orient your eyes, orient your energy to the point that you want to achieve in the future. And when you go where your eyes take you, and I normally use a motorcycle analogy because that's what I was taught, but when you go where your eyes take you, then you have clarity in what you're trying to do. And you make decisions that point you in that direction, as opposed to falling back to what you saw because your eyes are oriented that way. So I think it's important that you understand the principle of start point, and you understand the principle of going where your eyes take you, because that takes you from the past to the present to the future.
Oh, that is so good. That is so good, because a lot of times people talk about that, right? This is what I don't ever want to have this happen. I'm never going to marry a person like that. I'm never going to be like my daddy, my mother. And guess what? Right? You notice that you're doing some of those same things because that is what you have been focusing on, instead of looking at, well, what do you want? Right? So that is so important. And the other point, which is it starts with you. So just because this is where you are, it does not have to mean this is where you stay. So where are you wanting to go? And so for our men, we are looking to support you, to help you start thinking about, where are you now? How did you get here? There's a song, I cannot think of who sings it. Deborah Cox, I think it is. She says, "How did we get here?" And you get to decide, you get to learn and understand, how did you get here? But most importantly, what you're going to do about it, right? And so for our men who are in a place, in a space where you feel drained, life has just been mollywhopping you, beating you up in your head, and you haven't felt like you've had a safe space to just be you without having to put on any kind of
pretense.
Thank you. Any kind of pretenses. You can just be you, and you have a lot in your heart, in your mind that you just need to lay down. This wellness retreat, October the 2nd through the 6th, so 4 days, 4 nights, is for you, because you're going to get a place to relax and decompress, but then you're also going to have the support you need. So y'all will have the opportunity to have one-on-one session with me. I'm also going to be teaching y'all about why you're showing up the way you're showing up, whether it's hard for you to show up in relationships, whether it's hard for you to connect and have attachments to other people, whether you're trying to understand why it's so hard for you to be different than the way you've been seen. And then Eddie is going to come alongside, and we're partnering together to help give you the tools to start thinking differently, thinking strategically, and thinking about, like he said, where your eyes taking you and the direction you going. Is that really where you want to go? And if not, all right, well, we need to do differently. And so it is our honor and it's our privilege to be able to serve you all in that manner. Register today. Like I said, we only have 9 rooms available. These are the majority are queens. We have a few king suites. So first come, first serve. And so register today. If you know a man is your brother, your uncle, your daddy, your cousin, and you're like, listen, this man needs a safe space. He needs community. Because from this wellness retreat, we're building community for our men. And I forget who it was that said it earlier, but that's what men need, a community of healthy men. And what we're looking to do is to build that community to start helping the men become better men, better fathers. The little boys that are there that are wounded on the inside need to get healed. And so we want to help our men rise up as kings so that they show up in the boardroom healthy. They show up in their families healthy, and show up in the churches healthy. Wherever you go, wherever you go, you take you with you. So we want to help develop you, grow you, heal you, so that, like Eddie said, you are creating healthy legacy for and with your children. So I want to say thank you for y'all joining us, being here with us. If you want to connect with Eddie, he does a phenomenal, man, listen, and y'all are going to get just a little snippet if you are here at the wellness retreat, some of that, just some of the genius that is Eddie when it comes to helping the men. He works with the women as well. We do parents. We kind of help them with the trauma stuff, and he does some stuff in the schools as well. But if you want to connect with him, this is his website. This is his email. I think y'all broke our website, the RDH Counseling website, which is a good thing. Y'all keep coming there. But if you're looking to register, so Eddie, this is his information. He does a that life alignment, man. That's gonna get y'all all, man. That's gonna get y'all all the way together. And for the fellas that are able to catch this ride with the wellness retreat, you'll get to connect with him as well. And so we got days planned out for us to just pour into y'all and get you where you need to be. And for the wellness retreat, here is the link. The link is here. If you would like to register for that, go ahead and do it, because once the space is gone, the space is gone. And so you'll just have to catch it next year, God willing. Any other questions, comments before we close out? We're a little bit past the hour part. Questions, comments, the link is in the chat. Eddie, any last thing you want to say before we close it out?
I just want to say thanks, Rachel, for inviting me. Enjoyed the conversation. Hopefully the information that was shared benefited someone, and look forward to the Let the Kings Arise men's wellness retreat, and really building that community and interacting with men who are going to put themselves in a position to learn and gain from the insights that can be offered.
Yes, yes. Was this good, y'all? Throw that in the comment. Was this good? Was this something that was helpful for y'all? Next Tuesday, we will be going live again. So today we talked about father wounds a little bit. Next Tuesday, we're going to be talking about men showing up as leaders. And we'll be also talking about relationships. And so excellent. Chris said that this was great. Chris, you are so welcome. So we're going to next week be talking about men as leaders. And we're also looking at relationships, how men are showing up and why they're showing up in relationships, sometimes struggling to attach. So there's some attachment stuff going on. So thank y'all again for joining. Y'all be blessed. I'll see y'all next Tuesday. They are saying, Eddie, that this was great. Excellent. Same bat time, same bat channel, 7 o'clock. And y'all tune in to see who our next guest is for next week. Thank you so much, Eddie. Y'all be blessed. Y'all share this.